Back around 2015, I read a study out of Iowa State and decided to test something the herbicide aisle never told me about. Instead of another bottle of prodiamine, I spread a cheap corn milling powder across a customer's crabgrass-choked lawn. First season, mixed results. Second season, I dialed in the timing. Third season? That lawn had maybe a tenth of the crabgrass it started with. And I never sprayed a synthetic pre-emergent once. Then I added a second Pantry powder for the Clover, and that disappeared too. Total cost, under $15. The reason you've never heard this from a fertilizer company is simple, and I'll get to it. But first, stay with me. Because the difference between this working and failing comes down to one number on your soil thermometer. Here's who sidelined it. Not some shadowy cabal. The synthetic pre-emergent industry. The companies that make prodiamine. The herbicide aisle at every big box store. They didn't have to hide anything. They just never had a reason to bring it up. Back in the mid-1980s, a turf researcher named Dr. Nick Christians at Iowa State University was running a study on turfgrass disease. He was using cornmeal as a growth medium for a fungus. And he noticed something he wasn't even looking for. Wherever that cornmeal landed, seeds wouldn't germinate. The established grass was perfectly fine. But new seedlings? They couldn't put down roots. He'd stumbled onto a natural pre-emergent completely by accident. Around 1991, he patented corn gluten meal for exactly that purpose. That was over 30 years ago. Now here's the math. For 3 decades, homeowners have been buying synthetic pre-emergent applications at $30 to $50 a pop. Every spring, year after year, forever. And a $12 milling byproduct does the same job and feeds the lawn while it's at it. You'd think that would have made headlines. You'd think it would be printed right on the bag at the garden center. It never was. The discovery sat in university extension literature and trade journals. And the shelf you actually shop from never mentioned it once. That's not a conspiracy. That's economics. And I'll show you exactly how it works. All right, let's walk through it together. The first powder is corn gluten meal. That's it. It's the byproduct left over when corn gets milled into starch and syrup. What's left after the good stuff is pulled out. Feed stores sell it cheap as a protein supplement for livestock. It's a fine, gritty yellow powder, and it has been sitting in plain sight on every farm supply shelf in America the whole time. Go back to what Dr. Christians actually saw in that disease study at Iowa State. The cornmeal he was using as a fungal growth medium wasn't harming the established grass at all. What it was doing was stopping seeds from putting down roots. That's the whole secret, and it lines up perfectly with how crabgrass lives. Crabgrass is a summer annual. It does not come back from its roots. It dies every winter and returns every spring from seed. And a single mature plant drops around 150,000 of them. So if you stop the seed from ever rooting, you've cut the head off the entire operation before it starts. Now here's the part that never made it onto a single bag at the store. There's a second powder for the other enemy on most lawns, Clover. For Clover, I reach for borax. Plain household borax, the laundry booster sitting in the cardboard box in the cleaning aisle. Sodium tetraborate, under $5. 2 cheap powders, 2 different weeds, and not one synthetic in the mix. The industry never connected those dots for you because there's simply nothing in it to sell you twice. Here's how the corn gluten actually does its work. As it breaks down in the soil, it releases compounds, dipeptides, that block root formation in germinating seeds. The seed sprouts, it tries to push out that first root, and it just can't. It withers before it ever establishes. That is what makes corn gluten meal a pre-emergent. Read that word carefully. Pre-emergent. It works before the weed emerges. It has zero effect on a crabgrass plant that's already up and growing. None at all. That's the single most important thing to understand about it, and it's exactly why timing decides the whole battle. I'll give you the precise number at the very end, so stay with me, because that one number is the line between success and disaster. Borax works on a completely different principle. Boron. Now, boron is actually a nutrient plants need, in tiny amounts. Tiny is the key word. Push past that threshold and it turns toxic. And here's the leverage. Clover is far more sensitive to excess boron than your turf grass is. So a precise measured dose of borax tips the clover into boron toxicity, while your grass barely notices. You're not carpet bombing the lawn. You're making a tactical strike on the one plant that can't tolerate what the grass can. That selectivity is the entire game. And it's exactly the kind of nuance the herbicide aisle has no reason to teach you, because the day you understand it is the day you stop buying their selective clover killer in a jug. So let's talk numbers, because this is where corn gluten meal stops being a curiosity and becomes a system. The application rate is 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet. That is a heavy rate, far heavier than any synthetic pre-emergent, and that matters, so hold on to it. Here's why that heavy rate is a gift instead of a burden. Corn gluten meal is roughly 10% nitrogen. 10%. So while it's stopping crabgrass seed from rooting, it's also feeding your existing grass a solid dose of slow-release nitrogen. The turf thickens. It gets denser and greener. And a thick lawn is a fortress. It shades the soil and crowds out the thin, weak spots where crabgrass loves to sneak in. You're killing the enemy and reinforcing your own line in the same pass. One product, two jobs. Now the results, and I'm going to be honest with you about them. Year 1, you're looking at maybe 50 to 60% crabgrass control. That's it. It's not an overnight miracle. But here's what happens that the bottle never tells you. Every year that crabgrass can't set seed, the seed bank in your soil gets smaller. Fewer seeds means fewer weeds the following spring. By year 3, both Dr. Christian's research and my own 1,000 lawns put you right around 90% control. It compounds. It gets better every single season instead of resetting to zero like a synthetic does. And the cost? A bag of corn gluten meal plus a box of borax runs about $12 to $15 total, against $30 to $50 a year, every year, forever. That math right there is exactly why this never earned a spot on the shelf. Now here's where it gets interesting. And this is the part even people who've heard of corn gluten meal usually miss completely. The two powders don't just work next to each other. They reinforce each other. Clover is a nitrogen fixer. It pulls nitrogen straight out of the air, and it thrives in poor, hungry, low-nitrogen soil. In fact, a yard full of clover is the lawn waving a flag. It's telling you the soil is starved for nitrogen. Now watch what happens. The corn gluten meal you spread for the crabgrass is also pouring nitrogen into that same soil. And rich nitrogen is exactly the condition clover can't compete in. Its whole advantage disappears. The grass surges ahead. The clover gets starved out from below, and the borax finishes it off from above. Two powders closing like a pincer. Let me give you the borax recipe, because precision here is everything. Take roughly 10 ounces of borax. Dissolve it in warm water first, so it actually goes fully into solution. Then dilute that down into about 2.5 gallons. That covers around 1,000 square feet. Spray it evenly and move on. And now the warning, because I will never skip the warning. You apply borax once. One time. Do not repeat it season after season the way you would a normal treatment. Boron does not wash away. It builds up in the soil. Overdo it and you sail right past killing the clover into damaging your grass and sterilizing the ground, so nothing will grow. Precision kills weeds. Guessing feeds them. Or here, guessing poisons your own yard. Read the label on that box. This is the one spot where the household product warning matters more than anything printed on a herbicide jug. Now, before we keep going, I want to point you to something. If what I'm showing you is clicking, if you're starting to realize everything you were told about weeds was backwards, you're exactly who I wrote my book for. It's called Larry's 30-Day Weed Kill Protocol. $17 at larrysgardenbooks.com. Chapter 2 lays out the weed seed bank and what actually triggers germination, the exact biology that makes a pre-emergent like corn gluten meal work in the first place. If you're exhausted by the weekly pull and spray cycle and you want a permanent fix, not one more tip, that's your chapter. Watching on your TV? Grab your phone and point it at the QR code on screen. On a phone or laptop, just tap the link. Take your time pulling it up. No rush, I'll be right here. So let me answer the question I promised you at the very start. Why have you never heard this from a fertilizer company? It comes down to one word: patents. A synthetic pre-emergent like prodiamine is a proprietary molecule. Somebody owns it. They can lock it up, brand it, and sell it at a markup nobody else can touch. Corn gluten meal. It's a food byproduct. You can't patent corn. There's no proprietary molecule to defend, no exclusive product to build a business on. Christians patented the use, but the powder itself is a commodity any feed store sells. Then there's the revenue model. A jug of synthetic pre-emergent is gone after one season. You come back next spring and buy another. $30 to $50, year after year, for the rest of your life. That's a recurring sale. Corn gluten meal doesn't give them that, and it actually gets cheaper to use over time as your weed pressure drops. And there's the standardization problem. The retail model loves foolproof. Set the spreader, dump it whenever, walk away. Corn gluten needs a heavy 20-pound rate and a tight temperature window to work. That doesn't fit a convenient, idiot-proof bag. Now I'll be straight with you because you're smart enough to deserve it. Corn gluten is slower. Year 1 is only 50 to 60%. The bag costs more up front than a small jug, and it punishes bad timing without mercy. Those are real trade-offs, and I won't pretend otherwise. But weigh them against what the convenient option actually cost you. Decades of recurring chemical spend and decades of synthetic exposure on the same ground your kids and your dog walk across. For a result, a $12 powder delivers. All right, the number. The one thing that decides whether this works or blows up in your face. 55 degrees. That's the soil temperature where crabgrass seed wakes up and germinates. Your corn gluten meal has to be down on the lawn before the top inch of soil hits 55. I target 50 to 52 degrees and rising. Down here in North Texas, that's early March, and nature gives you a free signal. When the forsythia blooms, your window is open. Miss it, and here's the disaster. Apply corn gluten after the crabgrass has already sprouted, and you don't kill a thing. Worse, you feed it. Remember that 10% nitrogen? You just fertilize the exact weed you were trying to stop. You make the lawn worse, not better. That's the difference between working and failing. And it comes down to one number. One more nuance even the believers get wrong. Water it in once to activate it. Then let it dry out. Corn gluten only stops a seedling that can't recover its root. Keep the soil wet and those seedlings reroot and survive. Activate it, then back off the water. That's it. Before I let you go, now you've got the part the fertilizer aisle skipped. If you want every weed on your lawn handled the same way, that's the whole book. Larry's 30-Day Weed Kill Protocol. $17 at larrysgardenbooks.com. Chapter 8 gives you a crabgrass-specific protocol that takes today's pre-emergent timing and builds it into a complete targeted system, weed by weed, start to finish. It's a permanent fix, not another bottle off the shelf. If you're on the TV, aim your phone's camera at the QR code right there on screen. On your phone or computer, the link's sitting right below this video. Go ahead and get it pulled up. No hurry, I'll wait a second. So here's the takeaway. Corn gluten meal down before your soil hits 55 degrees. One careful borax treatment for the clover, under $15, and not a drop of synthetic. That's the discovery the bag never mentioned. And now it's yours. Next time I'll show you the molasses and microbe soil trick that wakes up your lawn's biology and makes those synthetic fertilizer schedules unnecessary. Go check your soil temperature. You'll see what I mean.